Dark Souls. Where do I even start with this one? Well, first of all, this video is going to be a little different from the others. I won't be educating you on a random topic I find interesting, but instead I'll be explaining a topic near and dear to my heart. Let me say this, Dark Souls is not a normal game. I'd be far more inclined to call it an experience. Without being too philosophical and vague, Dark Souls was the best time I've ever had in my life. While I may have gotten lost in Breath of the Wild and experienced pure ecstasy when playing Minecraft on Oxycontin, Dark Souls, with its gripping fear and intensity, mixed with an insane amount of pleasure upon overcoming a challenge and odd relaxing feeling in places like Firelink Shrine, is such an incredible feeling that I cannot explain. If, somehow, you haven't played Dark Souls and haven't seen much on it, and think it's just, game is hard so it's fun, I beg of you, please go play it before watching this. This game is something you need to experience for yourself. People wouldn't love it so much if it was just hard. If you need any more convincing, here are some spoiler-free reasons as to why you should play the game. First of all, the combat is incredible, absolutely insane, and easily the best combat I've ever experienced in a game, even to this day. The first game I played that I actually enjoyed the combat enough to call it a fun part of the game, rather than just ways to dispatch obstacles, is probably Wind Waker. Wind Waker has good combat mechanics, certainly far more than its predecessors, and I'd argue to say even more than Twilight Princess. Not quite Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild, obviously, but this was back when Skyward Sword and the Wii Motion Plus were still new. Wind Waker has a loose dodging system, fun, albeit too easy, parries, and varied kinds of attacks. It was missing something and I didn't know what it was. Maybe it was more varied attacks, or an actual blocking system instead of being essentially invincible with a shield, something like that. But I knew that it wasn't perfect. On top of the enemy AI being buggy at times. Then comes Breath of the Wild. It's a step above Wind Waker's fighting. Actual parries, breaking shields, time dodges, extra attacks and bows. But there was still something wrong. Enter Dark Souls. Dark Souls combat is perfect, at least the first games. The second has weird hitboxes, and the third misses so many marks that I'll go into it on its own later. But Dark Souls 1 has what I would call perfect combat. Shields with stats like what kind of magic it can block, but not too complicated if you look into it. Armors with different levels of damage absorption, parry timing that makes sense, like a certain other game in the series. Super fun dodging, and plenty of fighting styles, attacks, weapons, and so on. Yes, this makes it harder than the other games mentioned, but that's not a bad thing. If you're avoiding this game due to difficulty, let me squander that notion real quick. I would have gotten into difficulty later, but it fits far better with combat than as its own thing. The game's difficulty is blown way out of proportion in pop culture and marketing. Demon's Souls fans praise the difficulty, so instead of marketing Dark Souls for its complex story, or atmosphere, level design, or setting, they went for the throat of the niche that is hardcore gamers, because marketing to a niche is far easier than marketing to a broad audience. The game is not nearly as hard as the advertisements and memes say. You have a fighting chance in this game, but the game doesn't tell you that. Just like in the Tomb Raider reboot, where you aren't told you have a fighting chance against a supernatural force on the island. Granted, in that one you end up mowing down tons of enemies with nothing but a few guns later on, but that's beside the point. It strengthens the story in an inordinate amount. Now that might be an unfair comparison, as Tomb Raider is a story-driven adventure third-person shooter, while Dark Souls is an exploration action RPG, but I think you get my point. Yeah, the game's hard, but that doesn't make it necessarily hard to beat. It makes it hard moment to moment, but I did not struggle to complete this game. In fact, I found it pretty easy to do, and that's only because I found it so incredibly fun. Now let me talk about Dark Souls 3. A lot of people actually far and away prefer Dark Souls 3 to the first and second ones, so why do I say it misses the mark? Well, it's not a bad combat system per se, it's fluid and feels good to use, however, I would say it's profoundly not Dark Souls. On its own merit, that's not a bad thing. A fluid, good-feeling combat system is better than a bad one, but the other two games are far more strategic in their gameplay. Dark Souls 3 is far faster and far more reaction than strategy. For instance, the basic Hollow. In Dark Souls 1, the first enemies you see after the tutorial is a group of undead. One up above you throwing firebombs, others with shields, swords, and one with an axe. Each one has a different fighting style, and you need to consider everything. If you go too fast, you'll get hit by a firebomb, you'll get surrounded and decimated. In Dark Souls 3, depending on which way you go, you'll get a ton of undead who aren't hostile until after a few seconds, so you'll get surrounded if you don't have prior knowledge to the undead coming to warn the others, which you'll have to fight your way out of, normally R1 spamming, or you'll run into a couple dogs, an axe wielder, an archer, and a few other undead ready to easily overpower you. The game wants to surround and conquer you, and you need to overcome the game, rather than a game presenting a challenge and you trying to overcome the challenge. This isn't inherently bad, it just makes it very different from Dark Souls, and isn't something that I particularly enjoy. Oddly though, this isn't due to the actual combat of the game. That's remarkably similar to the first and second games. It's because of the level design. The Dancer is by far my favorite boss in any Dark Souls game. That's because it feels like a smoother Dark Souls 1 boss. It's very strategic. It lets you know what's going on and you can plan accordingly rather than having a split second to react to every single attack. The atmosphere of Dark Souls 3 isn't really there either. It's all bleak and grey and ruined. The story is there, but it's essentially laid bare. Nothing is hidden, and nothing is there for you to discover. For instance, one of the shields, the great shield used by the Pursuer in Dark Souls 2, is said to be far too heavy for any normal man to wield. That's a good description. It could mean anything, or it could mean nothing. It then goes on to state that this probably has something to do with those who wield it resisting the curse and the futility of it. Why did you have to add that? Let me infer and discover the story for myself. Respect the player to be smart. In the first game, the story is one of mystery, ambiguity, and complexity. That's not to say that if it was laid out on a platter in front of you that it wouldn't be good, but it's presented in a way that makes it thousands of times richer. The story could not bolster the gameplay the way it does if it were simply told outright. A bit of anecdotal evidence to support my claim. The first Dark Souls game I played was one that most people would say is the worst to start with, Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. The first thing I did was run to the Tower of Flame, die a few times, and stopped playing, since I wasn't enjoying the difficulty and thought the difficulty was all there was to the game. Not on the game's own merits, but on the marketing and the moniker it bestows in pop culture. Not wanting to have wasted my $10, I came back about a month later and started to pay attention. I actually talked to the Herald, I got the Estus flask unlike last time, I found the way to the forest and had more fun. Partly because I went to the right location, but also partly because I learned part of the story before coming back. I figured out that the entire point of the game is to save the land and kindle a bonfire. I had motivation and wanted to play on, to save these poor people pushed down by a curse they had no control over. I didn't get sucked into it the way I did Breath of the Wild. I didn't think I was the hero going through this land to save all these undead. Maybe because that's not the intention. You're not a hero, you're just another undead, but with a bit more determination. You decided to be the one to persevere. Well, one of the ones. You learn that you aren't the only one to have done this, and plenty, potentially hundreds or thousands, of undead have unkindled the fire, or attempted to perpetuate the Age of Darkness. It never lasted long. It was only a simple respite, but it was something for these damned people. Now that you know what you do, if you're going to play this game, please go do it now. I beg of you. Please go in knowing as little as you possibly can, and just play. Don't level up resistance though. Trust me, it's worthless. Anyway, this message pushed harder when I actually played the first game. I was the chosen undead, the one to defeat Gwyn, except I wasn't. Sure, Oscar chose me to avenge him and his family. The crestfallen warrior decided to tell me to ring the bells. I was the one to overcome the demons and triumph over the gargoyles, but I wasn't the only one. Not only because I had already played a different game, but also because other people had already beaten Dark Souls, and this echoes throughout the game. Every time a player rings one of the bells of awakening while you're online, you hear the bell ring in your game. The bells are almost constantly ringing, reminding you that you aren't special. You're always getting invaded, you're constantly getting items from other defeated adventurers on corpses littered about the land, presumably undead that thought they were chosen. They weren't special either. Maybe I'm reading too deep into this, but I think that's the point. Miyazaki tried to read Western fantasy novels when he was younger, but he couldn't understand parts of it, as he didn't speak English, so I made them up as he went. He wanted to capture this feeling in Dark Souls. We don't know how the worlds of players are interlinked beyond it's an online game, and we don't know who made the Bells of Awakening or why. At least, it's not spelled out for us. Why didn't the primordial serpents evolve scales and wings? We don't know. But you know what? Maybe that's even better. We can make our own story. We can make our own chosen undead. We can control what we do and the outcome of the whole story. You know what that means? That means you are special. You are you, and no one else can be you. You will not go hollow because you have a purpose. Whether that be to have fun, to brag to your friends that you beat Dark Souls, the feeling of ecstasy after every boss, you will not go hollow. You're different from every single person ringing those bells, and you're different from every other corpse laying on the ground with an item. You have your own interpretation of the story and the world of this game, and it gives you a unique experience. One that I'm jealous of, as I'll never get to experience it again. Dark Souls so profoundly affected me that it may very well have affected things I don't attribute to it in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it didn't. We try to read these sorts of things as Miyazaki tried to read the fantasy novels. We know bits and pieces. I played Dark Souls. After I played Dark Souls, certain things about me changed. Was this because of Dark Souls? I don't know. I don't speak that language, let alone read it. I went on a tangent, but that's what this game does. And this is what it's about. So much meaning can be found within this game. The game is what it means to you. Another reason that I love it so incredibly much. If you're struggling with depression, as I've heard many stories of, this game is a perfect allegory for depression. I bring this up because it's one that relates to me. The undead curse is depression, and going hollow is succumbing to it. Kindling the first flame is overcoming it, whether that be through medicine or therapy. The Age of Dark is deciding to live within it, but dictating how it rolls over you. Going hollow is losing. Losing purpose, reason, and quitting. Whether you quit Dark Souls and your character goes hollow, or you quit for real and you go hollow. Going back to the actual game, I'm going to break it down just a bit more, location by location. How each location impacts the world, the atmosphere, and the story, starting with the Undead Asylum in the next video. I've been teasing this video forever, and I need to get it out ASAP. The next part will focus more on the actual game, rather than the themes and impact, etc. I'm going to try to get one essay a week, and I'm hoping that this channel will take off into something that can sustain me. I honestly think that's the only way I'll be happy with life in general. So I'm going to do my best from now on. I don't know how to end this. Oh, and don't you dare go hollow.